There's people, there's attendees. So.
Yes, so it's working. I think Stephanie just clicked on.
The next.
Yeah, yeah. Joyce, you said that you had an invite in your email for this meeting. Sorry, you're muted. I'm just trying to help.
There was a link on the bottom of the agenda, and that's the one I could not get in with.
Okay, but you had an email from Rob. That, okay, I'm just trying to direct Stephanie to the right email. Because she's clicking on the one that just came today for the 18th. But I'm trying to figure out when that other email would have been so she can find that.
It was April 20th.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, she is.
Oh, Stephanie's there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
do we have a quorum? It doesn't
Yep.
look like it.
Peggy, I'm moving her over. She's
I
here.
just tried to.
Yeah.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good.
And I've heard that Ruby is planning on attending, hopefully around 6:30 at the latest. But we should have a quorum at least up until the last hearing. So hopefully if Ruby jumps on, we can keep going to the end.
Okay, it being 6:06 p.m. on Wednesday, not April 20th, May 5th, 2022, I call to order this meeting of the Brockton Conservation Commission. The first item on the agenda is review and acceptance of meeting minutes from March 16th. Did everyone have a chance to look at those? Do I have a motion to accept the minutes? Laura, are you making a motion?
Yes, make a motion to accept the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second, Worth.
All in favor, Danielson, aye?
Worth, aye.
Curtis, I.
Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is a the Wetlands Protection Ordinance Draft Update. And Megan, I think you're going to talk to that.
Yes, so just quickly, we're trying to schedule an update meeting. It looks like we have 2 dates that don't work for everyone, but work for almost everyone. And that would be June 1st at 6 and June 2nd at 6. So that's a Wednesday and a Thursday. So at this point, to keep things moving, I would recommend we pick one of those dates and hopefully as many people can show up as they can. Since it's been difficult to find something that works for everyone, but if we can get a consensus on the 1st or 2nd of June, we can go ahead with one of those.
Both those days work for me, and I think my preference would be the 2nd.
Same, both days work for me, but Thursday's better.
Second is fine for me.
Peggy,
Yep, hold on.
you getting your calendar?
I am. I'm coming back from a cruise, so I just need to make sure I'm back by then. Yes, I will be back by then.
All right, So it sounds like June 2nd will be the date.
Okay.
All right, and I forgot to remind everyone that in conformance with an order from the governor related to COVID-19, we are meeting remotely. And participation is through Zoom, which can be done either through your computer or calling in. We should have done a roll call attendance, so we'll do that right now. Danielson here.
Boris here.
Equal here.
Curtis here.
And we do have a quorum. For members of the public who wish to be heard at the time the chair will recognize you, you are asked to raise your hand either by clicking on the raised hand button that you should be able to see at the bottom of your screen. If you are dialing in, you press, is it *1?
Star 9.
*9. *9. And if you, let's see. Okay. All right. So we'll continue with the agenda. The next item on the agenda is a request for partial certificate of compliance for 77 Spark Street.
Was there an enforcement order?
Yes.
Oh,
and that
true.
was-
I'm
yes.
sorry. Yep. Yep.
And I
All
can
right.
speak to that briefly. This was in response to a call I got from Deputy Chief Ed Williams about some yard work being done in the rear of a property near Trout Brook. It looks like they have been setting up a sort of entertainment space in the rear of the property. So new fencing, some work on the ground, tables, things like that. The area is in floodplain and in the 25-foot buffer zone to BVW, if not some encroachment into the BVW. It depends on where exactly the fence is. It's hard to tell without an update with the aerial imagery, but I did send a letter out to the owner and he called today saying that he is at work tonight, but he does want to come to the commission and talk about the work and, you know, understand what he needs to do. So he said the next meeting, May 18th, should work for him if the commission is willing to move him to the next agenda.
Okay. Is the commission okay with moving this to the agenda for this
May 18th.
June, May 18th, May 18th. I'm already on June. Do I have a motion?
I move to move the Trout 50, what is it, 52 Trout Street to the May 18th agenda.
And it's 58.
Or
Trout.
58.
Do we have a second?
Yep.
I second.
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Boris, aye.
Equal.
This I.
Motion passes. I have a question, Megan.
Mhm.
When you say it looks like they're setting up an entertainment space, are we talking like, you know, just area in the backyard? You can enjoy the summer fresh air and outdoors, or are we talking about an entertainment center?
At this point, you know, I've only visited during the day. So I would recommend, you know, you can take a look at some of the photos I took. It's a large parcel and there are several tables, a shed, some sort of like sectioned off area. I don't have all the details beyond what I looked at relative to the ground impacts, but I think going from the photos, there's, you know, it's a fairly large space in terms of the number of tables and the area that's been fenced off.
So I think I see some nodding heads. You may know or gather where I'm going from this because Brockton has had several, I'm going to use the word illicit, someone can correct me, pay to get in parties, block parties that have become a little bit problematic. in neighborhoods. So if it looks like that, maybe we should give the appropriate city agency a heads up.
Yes, and I believe, so this was referred to me by Ed Williams on behalf of the Quality of Life Task Force. So I went out, on behalf of the commission, but it was referred to me from that task force.
Okay, so they are aware. All right, great. The next item on the agenda is a request for partial certificate of compliance with 77 Spark Street. And we have, okay, you see the hands there, Pam. Looks like Bill Self is here.
I'm not sure. I'm just trying to look because there might not be anyone for this because it's not a project. This was, if I may, this was a request that's coming from, I believe the legal counsel for 77 Spark Street. They're trying to refinance and they found that the property is in land court and is encumbered by an order of conditions for the property on the other side of the river. I believe it's 90 Intervale. And it looks like around the same time that those properties were part of a subdivision. So several parcels. This one, I believe, was lot 4 and across the river is lot 5 or vice versa. So basically, from what I can see, it looks like 77 Spark Street is encumbered in land court by the order of conditions for Intervale, even though none of the work is proposed on 77 Spark Street. So they're requesting a partial certificate of compliance, releasing 77 Spark Street only because it is encumbered in land court.
Okay, and this sounds similar. We had, didn't we have a
It's
request
similar,
for?
yes, it was Eisenhower Drive subdivision. So again, there was an order of conditions that affected 1 or 2 lots on the subdivision, but because subdivision ended up in land court, every lot was encumbered, even if they weren't in jurisdiction or didn't have any work proposed under the order.
Okay, and it looks like William Self is here. Do you want to speak? And if so, you need to unmute yourself. Ah, there we go. Now we can see you as well.
Should I speak up?
Dad, do you have anything to add to what Megan had to say?
Well, I'm here for the next one, which is the
Oh, okay.
195 Liberty Street, Stephanie.
All right. Well, in the interest of keeping things moving along then, do I have a motion to issue a partial certificate of compliance for 77 Spark Street? Or are there any questions before we entertain a motion?
If I may, Stephanie, I just
Yeah.
want to remind everyone now, as we've discovered, because this is in land court, anytime something is issued for land court, the registry insists on individual wet signatures. So if this COC is issued, I will need at least 4 members to come in and physically sign, or else they won't be able to record it, unfortunately.
Right. Which is not a reasonable reason for not approving it. So.
No,
do I
this
have-
was just,
no,
a-
that was a joke, a bad joke.
Mhm.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the partial certificate of compliance? Okay, are you reluctant to make a motion? Do you want me to make the motion?
So move to make a motion for 77 Spark Street partial certificate of compliance.
Do we have a second?
For a second,
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Boris, I.
Equal eye.
Curtis, I.
Motion passes. All right, the next item on the agenda is the request for determination of applicability for 195 Liberty Street. And Mr. Self, do you want to?
Yes, good evening, ladies to the commission. My client, Mr. Benjamin Kravitz, he owns the property 195 Liberty Street. There's a large building, a couple of different units in it. And they have an existing sign that's right at the entrance to the main building parking areas. It's a large sign. We on a couple of sheets that we passed in, you can see that there's a picture of the existing sign there, and there's also pictures of what they're proposing to do. They're proposing to replace
So,
what's.
just one moment. Are you able to share your screen so that we can show that to any members of the public that are participating as well?
If Megan could show it, do you have it available there, Megan? Or I might lose you if I do it.
Lee, I can share it, Stephanie, if you would like me to
Yeah,
do so.
please do. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna have to share it straight from my browser just for speed of bringing it up, but you should be able to see the browser at least. I'm just
Yeah,
gonna
and
try to zoom in on the area of interest.
Yeah, this is where you are, Megan, on that large, you can zoom that up. That's a larger scale. It shows. If you can all see the plan of what Megan has on the board, that's right at the entrance coming in right off of Liberty Street. There's a drainage ditch that goes under Liberty Street that flows all the way down the length of that property. It serves that building plus the building next door, with their drainage runoff. What you see in the green area, the green area is the area that we feel would be disturbed. It totals in about 233 square feet, not a very big area. And what they're going to do is they're going to take the existing sign location. They are going to remove the sign footings from the old, and they're going to install new footings for the new sign. Certainly they have just, different connections, so they'll need to do that. And also what they propose, if you look at the plan, you can see right in the middle, it's a 2x8 sign that they'll be seeing with lettering on both sides. It's a cross hatching in the middle, and down underneath the sign, they wanted to just dress it up a little bit, and they have a landscape timber planting area just for beautification. So that and that's about 6 feet wide by 7.5 feet long. It's really an area where, where the sign is now, it's fairly, it's a little overgrown underneath it. But what we're going to do is we have proposed a 12-inch silt sock, but we're also going to install the silt fence behind just as an extra precaution. It's on the sides, it's on the side slope coming in off the pavement towards the brook. So we want to stabilize as much as possible up on top. Now, I don't anticipate, other than the direct area where the footing is going to go, the 2x8 sign footing. That's, I think, the only area that's really going to be dug down probably 5 or 6 feet, so that they get the footings poured that would support the larger sign up on top. The area, if you can see the spot shots, there's not a lot of change at all on the area around the existing sign that's there now and what the proposed elevation will be. It's pretty much, we're trying to, it might be 2 or 3 tenths a little bit higher. That's it. The rest is going to be, as you see in green, that'll be all raked, and there are some briars in there, so they'll be removed. They're an invasive species. And it'll be replanted with wildflower seed mix. And we have about, we've got proposed 4 low blueberry bushes, as a replacement type of a thing that would also enhance, but it would be, more of a wetlands type of a bush. So again, I don't feel there's going to be a lot. It's more just grubbing out those briars up until where you see the silt fence in the straw wattle. And it's more for beautification, but there won't be much change to the actual sloping. It's just going to be stabilized and planted.
Okay, Megan, you issued a revised report after your initial report?
Yes, so in my revised report, it was to note some of the extra mitigation work that was added to the plan. So a more substantial erosion control barrier with the silt fence was updated. The addition of the wildflower seeding and the bushes were added as sort of a replacement for any of the clearing of the brush line that will have to occur, because there is an existing brush line just past the existing fence. It's mostly multiflora rose, so it is an invasive species. So it would be removed and replaced, according to this new plan, with some supplementary native plantings. So in the commission's consideration of it, this is an RDA, so the commission would be making a determination. It is a relatively small footprint in the buffer zone. It is, however, in the 25-foot buffer zone to the bank. It is pretty close in the sense that just past the sign, you've got the drop and slope right down to the stream. So it is in close proximity to the resource area, which is why my recommendation would be that to issue a -3, I would recommend the commission include a number of conditions just to ensure that the wetland resource areas are not impacted given the vicinity. So conditions including the removal of trash, that the erosion control barrier be inspected ahead of the start of work. Heavy equipment should be parked on the pavement. The restoration, plantings and seeding shall be completed by November 15th of this year, and the barrier should be remain in place until the area is stabilized. So that being said, those would all be a number of conditions issued with a negative determination. So I just want to make sure the commission is aware that a negative determination is not an order of conditions. So it would be issued and those conditions would be binding, and the commission could do enforcement if they're not followed, but there is no certificate of compliance following a -3 determination. So if the commission feels that the conditions required to protect the resource area are substantial enough that an order of conditions is needed, the only way to issue an order of conditions is following a notice of intent. So the process here would be to issue a +4 for this determination, which is what you issue for a buffer zone project that requires the filing of a notice of intent. So I think that's what the commission is determining here, a sense of, issuing a -3 with a number of conditions, or, are the impacts substantial enough that an order of conditions is needed, in which case you should issue the +4.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments?
What occurs as far as timeline difference, if you were to do the +4 determination with notice of intent? Does that extend the amount of time needed?
So if you issue the +4, that requires a notice of intent. So a notice of intent would be filed for this project reviewed like a regular notice of intent to review to issue an order of conditions with special conditions, ultimately leading to a certificate of compliance.
Any other questions or comments? Joyce?
No, thanks.
Any other commissioners have questions or comments?
I have a question.
Peggy?
Is it possible for the sign to be moved back so that it's not so close to the easement line? Is that feasible? Is that the reason for concern? For the commission?
I mean, I just speaking from having been out there, given the size of the sign and the planting, it's pretty much in the only space it can go without regrading. So if they were to move it back, they would have to regrade the slope to have a flat surface, which would be a more substantial impact than basically putting it where it's proposed is the only place it would fit with the current impacts that they're proposing.
The footings are where they're placed. Will they be impacted by the water that's going through there?
If I could speak on that, Megan?
Mhm.
Again, yeah, that you see the diagram in front of us now on the screen.
Mhm.
It's really exact in the exact location where the existing sign is. It's a fairly large sign. The footings themselves are going to be just where you see the black cross-hatched area. The footings will basically will be dug straight down. They'll set a form in there and then they'll pour their footings. So the disturbance again is really going to be more where that crosshatch box is. And again, as Megan suggested, everything will be done from the pavement so that everything that's dug out, including the old footing, will be put in a truck. All the material will be taken away. There won't be any stockpiling on and near the pavement or within that 100-foot buffer. So there's things that we can do to make sure that there won't be any as little disturbance as possible that the existing sign actually is doing. As far as the time frame, I think they're very anxious to go ahead and replace the sign. So I think they're pretty much ready to go. So as far as it being prepped, planted, seeded, I think it'll be something that's done fairly quickly if they could go forward. The negative, if for some reason we had to refile as a notice of intent, I just as a guess, I think it would put them back at least probably a couple of months, by the time you file and then you get the meeting and then you'll have to have, whatever the length of time is after that. But
so I don't see where it would be it would extend it 2 months because you have everything ready and it could just be filed essentially tomorrow and get on the next meeting's agenda.
Yeah, we'd also have to notify the abutters. So if you feel we have enough time, then it would just be probably another month type of thing.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the other commissioners. Peggy, do you have any other
I
questions or
do.
comments?
I want to know what the sign is made of and why is the sign being replaced?
I think, Megan, do you have the other 2 sheets that we originally sent over to you? This is the revised copy that we sent. The original one we sent in, it has the 2 sheets and it could clearly show what the sign really is going to look like. Plus it'll show you with the existing sign. It's been up there a long time, the existing, it's faded. This is a newer sign. Actually, the company that's doing it, I believe it's Sign Inc. or Sign Design. They're actually located right across the street and they actually occupy a couple of the bays in this building on the other side. But they'll be doing the
I
work.
think my question and was in relation to probably what, is there rust that's going into the ground now from the existing sign?
No, there's as the picture shows, there's two probably, maybe 4x4 metal posts. The sign, this actual signs about, there we go.
Mhm.
If we can get a flip on that, Meg.
I'm trying to see if there's any functionality to, usually there is, but
Yeah,
there might
You
not
have
be.
to, you have to download it and then
Okay, I
into a
thought
true,
so.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
well, if we can actually, if you could slide it up just a whisker, Megan, up to it. Okay, the opposite direction. I wanted to show right there. For the Peggy Curtis, I think, who was asking a question? Was that
Yep,
you?
Peggy Curtis, yep.
Okay. Yeah, if you see the sign, this is the existing sign right now. They have a couple of other people, like you see the open boxes here. They would normally put something else. They'd have the sign company and put something. I think the signs, it's got to be 20 years old. You can see the posts that are there.
Yeah.
They're metal, they're chipping. They need to be, painted up. They can certainly do something to the sign. But it's time that they'd like to upscale it, make it a lot nicer looking. If you could just scroll down a little bit on that, show what the right there. This is what the proposed sign would be, going in the same location. And you can see the bottom, it's going to be dressed up with just the landscape planter down below. You can see out behind this photo, those really are I think the bushes, the briar bushes that are out there. And most of those we could remove those, scrub those out. They would be within that area that we have, with the silt fence and the straw wattle. And that would be where the blueberry bushes would be planted back, as well as the wildflower mix. But it's basically just take it out, a more compact footing that's, straight down the ground. And just to give it a more of a, I believe that the fencing, I think they make it mostly out of hard plastic now. So it's really just an update for the whole company, for the whole site, for the building.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, considering the number of conditions and the work and the proximity to the resource area, I don't see how this really qualifies for a negative determination myself. So I would be inclined to vote against a negative determination. So at this point, if are there any, this is a request for determination. It's not a public hearing, but is there anyone from the public? I don't see anyone. Someone raised their hand. Ben Kravitz.
Yes, that would be the owner.
Mr. Kravitz, do you have?
Megan, can you stop the screen share so I can get thank you.
So, Mr. Kravitz, you need to unmute yourself.
There we are. You can hear me now, I assume?
Yes, we can hear and see you.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to say one thing. You really can't tell from the picture that Bill showed you, but the existing sign is actually falling over. It's been hit by a snowplow, and it's falling over. And we feel, first of all, that I should get that sign out of there fairly quickly, because I'm afraid it's not rusting, but it is, it's listing quite a bit, number one. Number two, we're more than happy to do anything, any contingencies, requirements that you have for the building or for the wetlands or whatever. We would be very compliant with that. We have been running a business in Brockton now for over 30 years. We own several properties in the city of Brockton, and we just really want to move this along as rapidly as we can. But again, we're willing to do whatever it is to comply with your requests, your requirements. That's the only, basically, I think it's going to be a beautification for the city, and it's definitely something that has to be done. As I said, the sign is in the process of falling over at this particular point.
So I appreciate those points. However, again, the conditions that have been recommended are typical of a project that should be submitted under a notice of intent. And I'm actually kind of surprised it wasn't submitted as a notice of intent. And then we'd be closing this evening, because the comments that Megan made originally were responded to. I think the project is certainly permittable. There doesn't seem to be any question or concern about conducting the project with the conditions laid out. I just feel this doesn't qualify as a negative RDA. And again, so I will entertain a motion from the board regarding the request for determination.
I move that a negative determination be made. Negative determination of applicability, is that the way that it's worded?
Mm-hmm.
If I may, Stephanie, so you do have to specify both negative or positive and then the number. So for example, a -3 is a buffer zone project that won't impact the resource area as shown and with any special conditions. Whereas a +4 would be a project that is in the buffer zone but requires a notice of intent. So you need a determination with the number because they mean different things.
So Joyce, is your motion to issue a negative determination 3?
Yes, and then you associate the +4 determination with that as well?
It's either one or the other. We're either determining that a notice of intent is needed
Yes.
in issuing a positive for, or determining that it doesn't require a notice of intent, which would be the -3.
Oh. Then I'll withdraw my,
Okay. So,
okay, so I think a notice of intent would best serve the area. I do, because it is a delicate area. So it would be +4 determination?
yes,
It would be the motion?
yes.
Okay, and that's what I would like to move.
Do we have a second?
I'll
Beekman,
second that motion.
Okay, we have a second from both Curtis and Beitler. All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Or side?
Beekler, aye.
Curtis, I.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Just a
next-
question, Megan, when is your deadline for filing? I mean, we'll try to turn it around very quickly, a day or so. When is your deadline for filing for your next meeting?
Yes, I believe it's in, I'll have to double check for you, but I will email tomorrow. I will draft the determination and also send the schedule at the same time.
Yeah,
And I
we
can do that
understand the
tomorrow.
board's
Yeah.
concerns and that we'll just turn it around and and refile under the order conditions.
Mhm.
I mean, under the notice of intent. And if there's anything else that you feel that we need to show or put on the plan, we'll be more than happy to do that as well. But as it stands, if we can just go ahead and refile, we'll just fill out the notice and put it in. And then we'll get
Right,
the
you know,
abutters and notify.
Right, the sooner, I mean, you could do that tomorrow before Megan issues the
Oh, we will.
determination. So,
Yeah, I just
All
wanted to
right,
find out what the final date.
Thank you very much. We
Thank
have a
you.
full, you're welcome. The
Good evening.
next item on the agenda is 940 Belmont Street, and this is a withdrawal. So we don't need to vote on that, do we, Megan? It's withdrawn and
No,
we don't need to
it's-
take any action.
No, it would only be a matter of if they were to go ahead with the work for some reason, the commission could vote to issue an enforcement order, but for now, you don't need to do anything.
Perfect. The next item is a notice of intent for 159 Torrey Street. Would everyone present for that be allowed into the room? And if they're on their phone, if they could please speak their name. I think Pam, you can change their name to appropriately.
I don't know who that is, so
Okay,
they
whoever,
need to identify themselves.
and you're muted. Not Pam, but the person that is calling in is muted. So you need to unmute yourself. You need to let us know who you are. We have a Carolina Vidal whose hand is raised. Carolina, you need to unmute yourself. Are you here for this hearing?
Yes, this is Rich Campbell. I'm sorry. I was expecting someone from Rich Campbell, General Manager at Thorny Lee Golf Club. I was expecting someone from John Holmgren's office to be representing us, but I guess they're not on the call.
You don't know who this person is, 774-226-6143?
I can look at my phone, but I do not know off the top of my head.
I don't want to hold the meeting up.
Right, yeah.
Again, we have a full
Absolutely.
agenda. If you're comfortable moving forward without a representative from Holmgren's office here, I will ask Megan to review her report with us.
Absolutely.
Okay, Stephanie, would you like me to proceed?
Yes, please.
Okay, so you may remember this has been before us a few times. This is the vegetation maintenance project, and as it was left the last time they were before us, the commission requested that the resource area, the bank, and the proposed work area with erosion controls be shown on a surveyed plan, as is standard for a notice of intent. So it was J.K. Holmgren's office that prepared this survey plan. Brad Holmes flagged the bank along with part of the bank on the adjacent pond, though it's not part of the proposed project. So at this point, that addresses all of the comments brought up previously. So at this point, I could recommend issuing the order of conditions. I would recommend the standard special conditions and also the additional special conditions that have appeared in the last two reports that I submitted to the commission and to the representatives.
Okay, commissioners, any questions or comments? And welcome, Ruby. I have no questions or concerns at this point, so I will entertain a motion to issue an order of conditions with the conditions outlined in the special conditions outlined in Megan's report.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Clara.
Okay, I saw
Curtis, aye.
Boris move her mouth and Peggy. Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. I appreciate all your help.
You're welcome. The next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for 466 Forest Avenue.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you. My name is Mike Jacques. I'm the Director of Facilities for the Brockton Neighborhood Health Center, and I'm present today with our engineer, Nicholas Betts from Meridian Associates. The health center is seeking this commission's approval so that we can obtain a building permit and begin site work on the high school, on the school-based health center located on the grounds of Brockton High. Our last hearing before you was continued as there was late information being submitted that still needed review. We believe we've satisfied the commission and beta group's request for information and hope to respond to anything else you might have.
Megan, do you want to give an overview of a summary of your
Yes.
report?
Yes, so when we left the last meeting, some of Beta's stormwater comments still needed to be reviewed, including Beta's request for test pits to check for groundwater and soil conditions. Subsequently, test pits were done and the design of the infiltration system was revised to reflect the information that came from those test pits. Beta has reviewed those revisions and confirmed that they have no more outstanding stormwater comments. At this point, my comments had been addressed and reviewed since the last meeting. So at this time, I could recommend issuing the order of conditions with the standard special conditions and the additional recommendations of special conditions from Beta Group.
Any comments or questions from the commissioners? And Ruby, we cannot see you, so you will either need to unmute yourself or raise your hand so I can recognize you if you have any questions or comments. Okay, it looks like we don't have any. Do I have a motion to issue an order of conditions with the special conditions outlined in Megan's report?
You need to close the hearing, Madam Chair.
Oh, thank you very much. Do I have a motion to close the hearing?
I make the motion to close the hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second,
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Forrest, aye.
Clara.
Curtis, aye.
Motion passes. Do I have a motion to issue an order of conditions with the special conditions outlined in Megan's report?
So moved.
Forrest, so moved.
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Forrest, aye.
Clara.
Curtis, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you very much.
The next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for Massasoit Boulevard.
Steve,
What about Oak Street?
yes,
Oh, did I miss one?
yes, I
Oh,
believe we're on
okay,
number 9.
I'm ahead of myself, sorry. I'm sorry, 455 Oak Street, which is a notice of intent for parking lot drainage improvements. Do we have anyone here for that? I see a couple of hands.
I'm okay to start, or
Yes, please.
sure. So my name is Tim Power, civil engineer for PBI Site Design, representing the Fullercraft Museum. We have the facilities manager, Paul Tantillo, on the call with us as well. So any questions? So this is a continuation from a previous hearing where we opened the hearing for the notice of intent. We had our peer review with Beta Group and the comments from Megan. We submit a series of revised documents to Megan. And I believe we're all, as far as I believe, all the conditions or comments have been addressed with some conditions that I'm sure Megan can touch on. Just to give you a brief overview of what we've done, I'm happy to share my screen as well. All right, can everyone see our screen?
Mm-hmm.
Great. So a couple key items.
If you could zoom in if you could zoom in a little bit, I think it would be a little easier to see.
Yep. Oops. Zooming. Here we go. So the comments included some sort of cleanup, some additional notes, some additional detail. The biggest items I'll touch on, the first one was actually over here on the southeast parking lot, where it was requested if we could pull back the pavement a little bit further out of the 25-foot buffer zone and provide some sort of stormwater capture there. We were able to do that and generally reconfigure. You can see our limit of work here. I'm circling in green. This area is all pavement today. So this is all getting restored to landscaped area all through here. And you can see we added sort of a stone, crushed stone filter just to catch the rainwater and slow it down as it goes off the pavement in that direction. And in this landscaped area, we've designed a little bit of a depression, again, just to capture the water and slow it down because it's so close to the pond. We included a plant list with some native species on one of the sheets as well, with quantities that we'll place in the fields to go with that. To jump over to this side, there was a comment about the label on this area here, which we correctly labeled now as a isolated land subject to flooding. The environmental scientists did go back out into the fields and in the field closed off the flags. You can see the end here and here on our plan, but in the field, this is closed off. And one of the conditions Megan suggested was that on the as-built, we include that and show that full area, which we're glad to do. We added some additional notes and detail to the site prep about stockpile areas outside of the buffer zone. We added some additional detail to the O&M plan and revisions and made it a standalone document with an inspection log and things of that nature. So I'm happy to answer more specific questions. Those are sort of the big takeaways from the review. Again, I'm happy to answer if there's any other questions that came up. Happy to address them now.
Megan, do you want to give a summary of your report?
Beta and I reviewed the revisions. We've gone back and forth a couple times since the last time the commission reviewed this, but the major changes are as outlined. Both Beta and I had recommended more substantial improvements to that southeastern parking lot. So the filtering strip was added as last requested by Beta. The restoration area with plantings and a planting plan was added as I had requested previously. And then the additional, Beta's additional comments related to the rain garden and meeting or showing the pretreatment and bolstering the pretreatment to make sure that there's adequate, separation of the suspended solids in cases should the rain garden basin receive enough water to spill into the wetlands, that there is still adequate pretreatment and they're still meeting the performance standard for pretreatment even under those conditions. So at this point, all of Beta's comments related to that stormwater has been addressed. My comments have been addressed as well. I did go out and confirm the rest of those flags to confirm that that western resource area can be considered an isolated wetland, and we would determine that it's large enough to be considered isolated land subject to flooding. So treat it as a resource area, but no buffer zone for that particular area. So based on that, I would recommend several special conditions along with our standard conditions for an order of conditions, particularly because this proposal also includes removing several hazard trees. I'm recommending some conditions based on, the placement of the crane out of the jurisdictional areas and on pavement. It's the standard conditions related to tree removal of leaving stumps in place, not leaving chipped material in the resource areas. I'm requesting when it comes time to remove each tree ahead of the pre-construction meeting, I'm asking for more details for the removal of each tree because they're all spread out over the property. So each one will be its own removal process. So a condition to make sure the commission is kept in the loop as the situation arises to remove each of those trees. And then a couple of our standard special conditions for restoration areas. So monitoring, requiring plantings and a monitoring report prior to a partial certificate of compliance and so on as listed in my report.
Okay, any questions from any of the commissioners? Okay, I just have one question, Megan. I don't think it would change anything. While you were out there inspecting that isolated land subject to flooding, did you do any evaluation to determine if it served as a vernal pool?
I was not able to at the time. The two times I've been out to the site, there was on one occasion, the first occasion, I don't believe there was any standing water that I remember. On the second occasion, towards the middle, there was a small area that was inundated, like right towards the middle. So it would be hard to assess it for a vernal pool unless it held standing water, for a more substantial amount of time. I would still think we should treat it as isolated land subject to flooding because I think it's, based on the topography and the vegetation, it's capable of holding a substantial volume of water. I just don't know how, for what sustained period of time it would actually hold that much water to assess it further.
Okay, all right. If there are no other questions, I think
we have a hand.
And right, but I think it's from the proponent side, and I think we have all the answers that we need from the commissioners. And I would like to, unless so at this point, I would entertain a motion to close the hearing.
I move to close the hearing.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Forsyth,
Equira.
Curtis, I.
And Ruby, I don't know if you have audio or can you raise your hand? Do you have the ability to raise your hand as an aye? There she goes. That's an aye. So motion passes. The next item on the agenda, and then if we can lower Ruby's hand, we'll use that as her mechanism for voting.
Did you, wait a minute, did I miss, you voted to close, did you vote to issue?
Oh, wait a minute. Do we have a
Thank
motion
you.
to issue an order of conditions?
Thank
with the
you.
Conditions outlined. I'm sorry.
I thought I missed it, that's.
I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor, Danielson, aye. We have an aye from Ruby,
Morris, aye.
from Clay.
Curtis, I.
And Laura, did you say aye?
Equal.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank
All
you very
right.
much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Commission. We've been working on this project for over 3 years. This is a huge milestone. We're really excited about moving forward. It's a win for everybody on this one.
Good luck. All the
Can't
best.
wait to go visit and see it.
Oh, thank you so much. Please ask for me.
Okay, the next
Okay,
item
go.
on the agenda is a notice of intent for Massasoit Boulevard.
I'm not seeing.
Do we have anybody? Because the folks who are on, except for that one person who's calling in by phone, I know Damien and Laurie are both for the Blackledge project.
Yeah, no, I believe Molly was the representative at the previous meeting. I'm not. Yeah, I don't see her.
Okay. They did not request a continuance, correct?
I'm just double checking really quick, but no, the last we received were the revised plans.
Okay, so Megan, why don't we just have you summarize your report? And then we can talk about the flood storage volume.
Yes. So at the last meeting, it was requested again that the proposed work in the flagged resource areas be shown more clearly on a surveyed plan, that some discrepancies between the surveyed schematic and the map that was shown be rectified. So we did receive, and I can bring it up here, we received revised plans that rectify the discrepancy of the pipe location and still include the surveyed bank and BVW flags. And I believe Stephanie had requested that the aerial imagery background be removed for clarity.
Mhm.
So they did that as well. So again, just.
Yeah,
as a-
that's,
Yeah, I mean, because
it looks like they're
unfortunately,
basically using GIS layers to. I've
well, I've
never seen a plan
quite.
quite like this.
So my understanding is the floodplain is a GIS layer because it's FEMA's.
Well, right,
Um,
I mean, the underlying base map. is-
Oh, yes, I believe so. The base map, yeah, would be a base map. I believe what was surveyed are the bank flags, the wetland flags, and then the locations of the handholds with the connecting pipes and the pad location. So I believe those are ground truthed, and I assume placed on the base layer, and then the FEMA also added to that. Okay, yeah, so those were the comments from the previous meeting was, a clearer plan to review. And so based on that, my comment from my previous report would carry over, which is that they are putting in, along with the handholds and the pipe, they are putting in the pad that the transformer is going to rest on, which technically is going to be in the floodplain and would be considered filling bordering land subject to flooding. So as part of the performance standards for bordering land subject to flooding, the commission has to determine whether the impacts of whatever fill it is either will cause a raise in flood stage or an incremental raise in flood stage as a result of the fill to the floodplain. And if the commission determines that's the case, then compensatory storage for the volume filled needs to be provided. So right now, the plan is not proposing any excavation that would be considered compensatory storage. They're proposing to restore at grade. So to go forward, the commission needs to determine, is what they're proposing, the handholds, the pipes, the pad that the transformer is going on, is that going to change or cause an incremental change to the flood stage, to the level of flooding within the floodplain? And if the commission determines yes, then compensatory storage needs to be proposed before the performance standard is met.
So Megan, how do we determine that with no contours and no analysis from the applicant? I mean,
Yeah, so basically, I'm speaking for the applicant here, but the applicant's position is that based on the size of what's being installed, the impacts will be negligible. That was what's presented in their NOI written narrative. So that's, the case that they're making is based on what's being installed. The change to, what is right now floodplain is negligible. That's their argument.
and again, I feel like I'm being a curmudgeon, but I've had a very hard time looking at this plan and really trying to figure out everything that's going on. Where is the area that's being filled again? Is it from the footings? But you said they're going to regrade back to regular grade.
Right, so to summarize the impacts as a whole.
Yeah.
Lost the screen there. To summarize the impacts as a whole, there's, I believe, 9 light poles, and they're putting in like the handhold that goes in the ground at each one, the conduit that connects all of them, and then the concrete pad is going, on the ground at current grade, and it's I think a couple feet by a couple feet in area.
And that concrete pad, that's for the transformer pad?
Yes, it's the concrete base that the transformer sits on.
Is that the red square?
Yeah, the
square,
red
right?
square is the one transformer.
And that's not going to be a ground level though, right? That was going to be raised above ground level, wasn't it? Because of the
It
fact
has
that
to be.
because of the floodplain.
Yeah, it's on the pad. The pad is proposed on current grade, but the pad, itself is a concrete slab that the transformer goes on top of.
So it's really, the concrete pad is going to sit above the
Surface.
flood elevation.
That's my interpretation. So if you think of what's current flood storage, the current flood storage is there's no base flood elevation, unfortunately, because this is a zone A. But if, whatever the base flood elevation is, the area up to where the ground meets that elevation is current flood storage. So if you put a concrete pad, in that area, the area that the concrete pad is taking up is, fill in the same way that if they were raising the ground, it would be fill.
Right.
And so
And
that's
they
just-
haven't,
I'm
well,
sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Joyce.
Does that mean that it's displacing some of the potential storage for the,
Right, so if you
Flood
were to
water.
imagine the river overtops and it fills in that area, and it would go in that area where the pad is, but presumably if it floods, some of it's going to go around the pad up until the point it gets high enough to overtop the pad.
And
This replacing another one, or is this something new altogether?
This is new, which is why they're filing it as a notice of intent. Technically, you can maintain utility structures under an exemption of the regulations, but in this case, the only existing structures are the light poles themselves, is my understanding. So the handholds, the conduit, the pad, and the transformer would all be new additions to the area.
And so Megan, my understanding of the exemption for utilities is utilities delivering like power lines or something like that, that's delivering service, not providing
Right,
service.
yeah, and I
to a-
think this was a couple months ago when they reached out about whether the exemption applied, and I
Yeah,
remember telling them for a number of reasons they needed to
Yeah.
file a notice of intent. I think you're also right that these are, I believe, yeah, they're just light poles. So I
right,
don't think
and
they transmit anything else.
right. And the power supply is for the purpose of the light poles
Mhm.
themselves. It's not a utility that's.
Right, they're
again,
not utility poles that have lights
Right.
on them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So again, how it would seem that this pad is not going to significantly displace water. However, they haven't done anything, it sounds like, to quantify or demonstrate that.
No, there were no calculations other than the dimensions of the pad. So
Mhm.
again, I think their argument is that they think that based on the dimensions of the pad, that the pad is small enough that
That
you
it's
wouldn't
de
think
minimis.
yeah.
And what's your take? Do you have an opinion on that?
I mean, so it is complicated. This would be easier to answer if this was a zone AE with a base flood elevation. And
Right,
then they could provide the contours and really say, how much at the level of each foot, how much they're filling. I
Yeah.
do think they're put in a difficult position in that I don't know, it would be hard for them to prove that it's a negligible issue because we don't know the base flood elevation. So they could show the contours, and do all of that, but then, what are they calculating when they're just going by FEMA's overlay and not by a base flood elevation, which makes it hard for them to prove, the foot by foot effect the fill would actually have. I mean, that said, it's always, the safest way to meet the performance standard is to provide the
Provide the
compensatory
storage.
storage. And then, it would be a trade-off because it would be a small area they'd have to excavate out. They'd basically be excavating out the volume of the pad.
right.
So it would be a small amount of work. It would just be an extra impact to the other buffer zones, because this is all either in buffer zone or floodplain or riverfront or
Right.
both. So they'd be introducing a new impact at minimum to a buffer zone in order to keep it, because it needs to have a hydrologic connection to the existing floodplain. They can't just excavate a hole way out of the way. They have to do it there.
Right.
So, it's a small impact, but it would be adding an impact. But I would say the safest, most conservative way to meet the performance standard would be to have them provide an excavation equal to the fill area.
Right.
I have a
So-
question too. Is
Okay,
that,
Peggy.
excuse me, I'm sorry. Is this setting precedents for the rest of the lights that ever have to be replaced? And how many lights does this transformer supply power to? And if you notice all along the boulevard here, there are more lights. So when the rest of them need to be replaced, are we going to set precedents of having this in the floodplain? And is there another area that they could have put this that was not in the floodplain?
By my understanding, this proposal is for the work on all the lights that are in our jurisdiction to this waterway. So there might be other light poles on campus, that they are doing this same sort of work to, adding the handholds, doing conduits. My assumption is that they're not in conservation jurisdiction, or they would have included it with this. There's no way to say that they won't need to do something to these lights down the line, but my assumption is these are the lights in conservation jurisdiction that they're proposing to work on here.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners want to make comments or? I'm also feeling that we're kind of in a position because no one from the applicant side is here. And I feel we probably should continue this and perhaps because of the change in the meeting date, someone either forgot or just
Yeah, it's
had it.
possible. I was double checking just to make sure. Because I did send out a reminder email just in case. I think I sent it out May 2nd. And
Mhm.
as far as I know, just looking at it, I think I got at least someone from every project.
Yeah,
But, again, I can't speak to beyond that.
I think we
And,
still
I
have
mean, they
too many
said-
questions about, contours and the intent. I think we're making a lot of assumptions here. So I would move that we would continue this.
okay, do I have a motion to continue?
I make a motion to continue.
Oh, you did make a motion. That was essentially a motion.
That's
Do we have a second?
Declare second.
Okay, Ruby, do you have a question or are you voting in favor? And to indicate if you are voting in favor, now raise your hand again. Lower your hand and raise your hand and I will know that. Oh, she keeps moving off my screen. Megan, can you stop sharing so I
Yeah,
can
And I
see
did
everybody?
see she lowered her hand and raised it again.
Okay.
just now.
So Danielson in favor, Clay in favor.
Boris in favor.
Declare favor.
Curtis in favor.
Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is a notice of intent for 82 Ames Street. Again, it doesn't look like anyone's here for that.
Yes, and I'm not, again, I know we postponed this, but as I remember, I've been in contact with everyone either in the form of revisions or,
Yeah,
so everyone, I believe, knew of the continuance, of the date of the continuance. And again, I'm looking, I did on May 2nd, send the revised agenda to, every representative company. So The last contact I had was after the last meeting. I received some follow-up in an email comments related to my comment letter. And then the engineer said he needs some more time to draft a formal response. I haven't received that formal response or heard anything subsequent to that. The last contact, the engineer asked for some of the DPW records about Searles Brook and the location of it, and I sent that over via email. They're also shared in your folder, but that's the last contact I've had.
And was it your text or email this morning? I can't remember how we communicated. That indicated is we need proof of a butter notification. Am I mixing up something
I don't
else?
believe that was this hearing hasn't officially been opened.
Right,
On
so
the
we need,
March, yeah, it was on the
So-
March agenda, and they continued ahead of the meeting to address the
That was my-
reports. Yeah.
that was my very subtle way of asking if this was a new hearing
Mhm.
and not admitting that if it wasn't, I couldn't remember it. So thank you for the answer. So it is a new hearing. I guess we need to make a motion to continue. Do I have a motion to continue?
I make a motion to continue.
Do we have a second?
Motion seconded.
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Forsyth,
Ruby has her hand raised.
Clara,
Curtis, I.
Motion passes. That brings us to the Pleasant Street project, which I need to recuse myself from. And so I will, tonight I'll make a motion to appoint Laura as the temporary chair or vice chair of the meeting to take over while I step away. Do I have a second?
second. Forsyth,
All in favor, Danielson, aye.
Forsyth,
Curtis, I.
Ruby has her hand raised as an aye. Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much.
bye-bye, Stephanie.
all right, good evening. We're gonna pick up the notice of intent for property, 40B apartment complex with storm infrastructure in Brockton on Pleasant Street. Who's here for the parties to speak? Lori?
And Damian Dimitrik.
All right. Let's start off with, this is an update, correct? Because it's a notice of intent. So we had already opened the hearing, correct, Megan? And this is a continuance of that, right? Okay. So we had some additional information that we had asked for clarity on. And who would like to begin, Lori or Damian? Lori?
I can begin. Can I screen share? Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay. So can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thanks. You can see it still? Okay, so my name is Laura McDonald. I'm with Conoco Engineers and Scientists representing Blackledge LLC regarding the 40B project proposed at 91 Union Street and Pleasant Street in Easton and in Brockton. With me tonight is Damian Dimitrik, who's the professional engineer on the project. And I just wanted to go through the plans and quickly show you some of the revisions that have occurred since our last hearing. These are the revised plans. Since the last hearing we spoke at, There's been 2 sets of plans that were submitted. This is the most recent set, revised April 29th, 2022. So since our last meeting, we've added the 25-foot no disturbance zone. And we have changed our design such that instead of a stormwater basin in Brockton, there's now an infiltration system proposed. So let me get this. So this is the outline of the proposed infiltration system. And on top of it, we're proposing snow storage beyond the backside of the infiltration system itself. We're proposing a post and rail fence to define the limits of the snow storage and keep any equipment from moving back closer towards the BVW back here. And we're also installing no snow storage beyond this point signage on the post and rail fencing. This pink line actually is the town line. Brockton is above the pink line and Easton is below the pink line.
Sorry, Mike, I'm not sure if I'm seeing the right map.
No, it's just
Okay.
the initial picture.
You're not seeing it?
I just see the title page for
Yeah.
big plans.
Is this, can you see this?
Now I can. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I have 2 screens and I'm sorry about that. So I have 2 screens and I tried to switch over to my other screen, but apparently that doesn't work. So we added again this 25-foot BVW buffer line, which was absent from the original plan set. We also are proposing snow storage here in this new infiltration system area. Originally, we were proposing stormwater basin. Now it's the underground infiltration system. We have added post and rail fencing around the system itself and no snow storage beyond this point signage mounted on the fence.
Are you going to go into the infiltration system?
Yes, I'm going to go into the infiltration system. I'm just going right through the plan
Okay.
set. I'll go down
Okay,
to
that's
that.
fine. Thank you.
So this is the actual infiltration system itself. So as mentioned before, there was an above ground basin proposed in this location. We have since proposed everything to be installed underground. All stormwater is going to go to these underground Cultec chambers with isolation rows that will provide CSF removal. There were a series of comments issued by both the city as well as Beta, and we've made some designs to the Cultec system, including adding a 5-foot overdig around the infiltration system, which is shown here in blue. We are now proposing sand to be used as replacement material. And the details have been updated on sheet 14 to further define what is proposed within the Cultec's construction. We've also proposing impermeable breakout barrier along a 3-to-1 slope. That's also included in the details. And we've been able to remove the infiltration system back 50 feet from the BVW line. So we've added this 50-foot infiltration setback line, which is here in yellow. So our outlet, as well as the Cultec system itself and the piping, are now more than 50 feet from the wetland. We have cleanouts now shown as well on the plan. The clean out here in this case is in Easton, and the operation and maintenance plan has been updated to describe how the underground infiltration system will be maintained. go to the next plan. That's it. I did want to make mention, there was concern about the access to areas outside the project limits. There is a set of stairs that we are proposing down along the backside of the property in Easton. This is necessary to maintain the wall and perform any other maintenance within the project area. Here's the project boundary right here, the project limits, this dark black line. So we had to keep the stairway, and we're adding a sign at the top of the stairway that says emergency and maintenance use only, in order to keep people from using the stairway for recreational purposes. There was also a proposal, let me get to seed the basin itself with conservation wildlife seed mix. So this entire slope will be seeded, and we are just proposing regular grass seed mix within the fenced area of the infiltration basin, mainly because we're going to use this area for snow storage. So it's going to be worked. There'll be piles of snow there, and potentially it'll be used for some recreational purposes in the future also.
Lori?
Yep.
Can you briefly go over what will be done as far as maintenance for that infiltration basin? Is there access to the actual pipes and that whole system that's going to be underground?
I'm going to let Damien talk a little bit more about the operation and maintenance. He's the engineer who was in charge of the actual design.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have interjected there. I should have waited
No,
till you
that's
were
okay.
done. Sorry.
No, that's a perfect opportunity to discuss this.
It's okay. I can just give you a quick synopsis of what's going on with those basins. So those chambers, as shown there, have a isolation row, which is basically a set of the chambers are wrapped in Marafi filter fabric. It's a pretty standard practice. It reduces TSS. And helps maintain kind of a lot of the sediment and soils within those chambers. And then what you can see is we have those manholes that are kind of abutting it. So what they'll do is if there is ever an issue, it's not something that's often done. The infiltration chambers, is difficult to get down in there and to get access, to the far ends of that. They can, though, send hoses down through those pipes. We got an 18-inch pipe there. They'll, vacuum out the sediment and everything that will get in there will be very minimal. Most of it will be getting caught in the catch basins. And then at that, it'll only be at that very front entrance where a minor amount of sediment will ever really build up. There's also the inspection ports you can see towards the back. It's got near that spot grade. You can those are throughout the system, and then there's also at the outlet control structure there's access. Maintenance for those is very minimal. It's only if there's ever it's just inspecting, making sure it's continuing to function properly, infiltrate, but maintenance wise that system doesn't require much.
So they're basically giant socks under the ground? Is it basically giant socks?
Oh,
underground?
so they're underground chambers. They look
Right.
yeah, Lori, look at the details here. Scroll up so you can see the profile views as well. So they're kind of giant underground horseshoes. They're very similar to what would be you see in a lot of leaching fields trenches. It's a very similar type setup. These ones are just much bigger. The ones that are shown there, those ones are about 2 feet in height, maybe even a little more, maybe 2.5 feet. And then the ones to the right are actually 4 feet tall. So that those ones someone could, even almost crawl in if they ever had to, but I hope no one ever has to do that. So they're just, very large underground trench chambers, except it's not built for, they're designed for stormwater rather than leaching water.
So the stormwater will be literally stored in there until eventually it
Yeah, it's
permeates
the
out?
same way that an infiltration basin would work, except where we put it underground and it creates a void space for the water to build up and eventually infiltrate from, between storms. In the drainage report, there's sizing calculations to make sure it drains within 72 hours. At the end of, so the smaller chambers, I just designed those with an outlet pipe that is elevated above the bottom elevation. And that gives it, a storage volume that meets the required recharge volume, the required water quality volume, 1-inch storm, nothing like that's going to really get out of the system. It's the larger storms that we're holding back the, flows and making sure that, we don't have anything, causing flooding downstream. And then on the larger chambers to the right, there is an outlet control structure, wear manhole that just has some smaller orifices that, gradually let water out. Again, still designed to hold the water quality volume, still designed to, meet all the recharge requirements. It's just, it requires a little more ingenuity into the outlet control, the same way an infiltration basin would work, except it's underground now. Our footprint's a little tighter and smaller. We don't have to have the big berm up and the berm down, as was a request, a beta comment that they didn't want that part of the system within the 50-foot buffer. So.
Oh, yep. The thing that has the yellow, where's the yellow that shows the actual infiltration basin? Yeah, that. What is that little, that rectangle, the little square yellow thing at the end of the, yeah, that.
That's an outlet.
That's a flared end outlet section with a riprap plunge pool. It's basically just the outlet of the pipe, so that if you can see the wear manhole IS3, it's that manhole at the end. That's the one that has a couple of orifices in it that will slowly let out water. And then that flared end section, it goes to, it leads to the flared end section 1 with plunge pool. That's there to reduce scour. Basically it's a smaller pool at the very end to catch any final sediment with some riprap around it to prevent any scour. And then it will just, hopefully has a nice level outer edge, and that will drain, evenly out to the wetland and intermittent stream.
And so it should be mentioned that these catch basins will pre-treat flow. They're deep sump hooded catch basins. So prior to the drainage reaching the infiltration system, there will be some additional TSS removal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With that being so close to the wetlands, is there any potential for there being not enough of a differential for it to really seep out? Or what would happen if it was really wet in the area surrounding that?
I mean, well, we do test pits on site. The groundwater is 4 feet below the bottom of my stone there. So that has 4 feet of separation there for infiltration. And as requested by Beta, we put a breakout barrier. So none of the water is going to directly leach out the side of that that 3-to-1 slope there. It's going to be 1 foot below the bottom of the chambers.
Okay.
So water isn't, if that's your question, there's not going to be any water coming out of the sides of the slope. It's not going to slope there.
Right.
It's just going to be, normal wetland conditions. Groundwater there was 4 feet below existing surface where I had my test pit done for those chambers. It shouldn't be that wet. That's currently a grassed area. There's no trees. The overhead wires are there currently. You can see at the top. It's got a good distance before really any it's gonna impact the wetland. We're outside of the, it's just outside the 25-foot or just inside the 50-foot buffer there.
Yeah, between the 25 and 50.
Yeah.
The other question that I had was if you could have snow storage on top of that, and it looks like it grades down towards the wetlands.
Yeah, so if you look closely at the design there, I added some spot grades and show it to show a slope that directs it back towards the site. It's the right below the highlighted yellow
I
that
see it,
Lori has. You
189,
see
yeah,
spot
yeah, I see that.
180.9, 180.75, right? So that's kind of create a bowl and direct any drainage back towards the site.
Which will go back.
It's just the use of an area. Hopefully, again, that'd be extreme snow storage areas over there. And it was asked by Megan to add the fencing and the no storage beyond this point.
Right.
To really, drive that home. There hopefully it's going to be those major storms that do exist and they do happen, that they'll need to have that overflow area. But anywhere that we can have snow storage, I like to try and call it out just because we have to build up this giant mound anyway in the air to get our infiltration to work. We're trying to, the location there kind of keeps it. I could have flattened it out and elongated it, but that's going to cause us, to get closer to the wetland on the other, the other 50-foot buffer as it gets closer. So we just, we came up with this is the best design to help the area, and if by using snow storage for it, we get as much out of it as we possibly can. Is my concept.
Because of the sensitivity of the area around it, would it be possible to prohibit the use of salt?
There's already actually a sign at the front of the site. It has been recommended that we prohibit salt to the front of the site. You're going to have to go to the layout sheet for that, Laurie. And it's just at the location. So it's sheet number, that one. There you go. No road salt beyond this, or no road salt sign.
Road salt is prohibited. So this is Pleasant Street right here.
Yeah,
right.
So as you're accessing the site, there's a sign right in this location here.
Which it's in the O&M already, the operation and maintenance plan. It's been added there from Easton, and to that extent. But they want sometimes the plow drivers aren't the ones who are looking at our operation and maintenance plan. So this kind of drives that home.
Mm-hmm. And could I just see the boundary again, where the Brockton line is?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very small portion of the project is actually in Brockton. It's only the chambers there.
That's the pink line here. I try to stay consistent with our GIS mapping and what Mass GIS uses. That's why it's pink. It's probably the most important plan. Really, just a part of the filtration basin itself is in Brockton. And maybe some excavation when constructing these walls might fall.
Yeah. And that is simply for
well.
That is simply for stormwater, correct? That whole infiltration basin is just stormwater.
Yes. And I will note, I did notice in part of the plans, the erosion control line, there's actually a piece of pavement that crosses right there. So I pulled that back for the plans moving forward, but just so everyone's aware, that erosion control, there's a little bit of a kick out probably where the spot 180.75 is, just because there's existing pavement that I assume we want removed.
Peggy, did you have a question?
I do. Laurie had mentioned that the snow removal area would be used for entertainment. I was curious about that.
I think what she was recreate. It's an open grassed area. It is an apartment building. Not entertainment. I could it's an open grass area, so a kid could go throw a ball over there. I think is the idea. There's nothing that we're proposing that's going to be used. We were going to use loam seed. I think she was getting to the fact that a wildlife restoration mix didn't really work very well on the top of that system, and it will probably, it's a fenced in area, it's against the slope. Again, just getting use out of it because we need it to be there. So just I think recreation was the word or the term used.
I had another question too. Where the stairs are over at the end for maintenance use, would equipment ever be needed to be accessed on the outside of that barrier? And is that big enough? And you don't have a matching set of stairs on the other side. Is this enough to perform the maintenance that would be needed on the outside?
So maintenance, I think, it would be, if there was any repairs required to the wall, if say, overgrown trees needed to be, that were going to fall on the site and there was an agreement to, protect that from, or if something were to happen and an old tree were to, fall onto it, to get back there, emergency use is more of the concern. These walls, due to the stormwater, due to all the systems on site, are going to be, reasonably high. We're looking, 5 to 7 feet in areas. I think maybe 10 is at the tallest point, and at some location a wall. So it's mostly access back there for emergency purposes. If anything were ever to happen, if they needed to get back to the back of the site. If you look, those retaining walls are long, they're far. It'd be very difficult to access back there without having some sort of access. So that's kind of the situation. Also, as Lori's highlighting perfectly right now, is like the plunge pool at the other side of the site, we do have an outlet that directs itself to the wetland in the eastern portion of the site. That to get access to that as well. For the riprap, they need to clear vegetation out of the riprap. If there's any concerns with the use of that, they need to clear some trees or shrubbage from the outlet of the pipe to make sure that it's flowing correctly.
Okay, thank you.
This is huge. I think you need a 10-foot soap sock. It's huge. Wow.
It's pretty. What do you mean by huge?
No, it's just a big project for such a delicate area, I think. But
I mean,
It's a
consider the site is,
redevelopment.
and I agree, it's delicate. There are portions of wetlands and everything there. It is an existing, developed site. Most of the area is cleared. We're increasing treatment and infiltration on the site compared to that of before, recharging areas that weren't recharged, removing, old buildings and concrete pieces throughout. It is very much, it is a packed site. There is a lot of, units, there is pavement, there's a lot of things going on. But it's a great use for the site. It's going to add some housing to your abutter, Easton, which they desperately need. So I as much as it is, yes, a packed site, there's a lot on it. There's a lot going on. We like to think of it as an improvement, and we hope you find the same.
Okay, Megan, was there anything that you wanted to report out that has changed since the last time?
We've gone over sort of the updates to the plans. It's been a bit since our first set of comments. So I just wanted, in my most recent report, I wanted to touch on the comments that I think the commission should consider when they're looking at these revisions. So the first note I had was in relation to the impacts in the buffer zone to the northern wetlands. So what is also the Brockton wetland BVWL, which is in Brockton and then crosses over into Easton. I'd like to make the note that both the land use agent in Easton and myself have noted that there's retaining wall and grading proposed in the 25-foot buffer zone to BVWL, both where it's in Easton and also in where it's in Brockton. And so it's been recommended that some buffer zone restoration plantings could be proposed to sort of offset that in additional footprint increase into that area. I know on the Brockton side, they are proposing the wildlife seeding around the slope of the infiltration mound, and then also a little bit along the retaining wall. The same in Easton, they're proposing the wildlife mixed seeding, in Easton's buffer zone. And then in terms of additional plantings, so I know Easton's land use agent had recommended that, you know, they could do some woody and herbaceous plantings. Currently, they are proposing 3 or 4 red maple plantings on the eastern side. So 3 tree plantings, 4 if you consider the 4th one that's further out into the buffer zone, but 3 that are really sort of, I would say, in the 50-foot, which is where you'd like to see, you know, buffer zone restoration plantings. No additional plantings are proposed in Brockton, so I just want the commission to consider, you know, do you think the wildlife seeding is sufficient, you know, to offset that bit of the retaining wall that is going to be in the 25-foot buffer zone to Brockton section of BVWL? Again, my recommendation would be to see, you know, a little, and again, it doesn't need to be huge. I would expect it to be sort of commensurate with the encroachment by the retaining wall, but an area, I think there is space and opportunity, you know, to do a little bit more with that planting plan. And based on the Easton agent's most recent staff report, it seems like Easton is suggesting the same. So that's one thing I think the commission could consider. We've already talked about the snow storage area, but that was my previous comment when they're proposing the snow storage is adding the fencing and the signage to hopefully deter the packing and piling of excess snow, because of course we're hoping to avoid the snow from overtopping and going down the slope, you know, putting it closer to the 25-foot buffer zone and the wetland area. And of course, if it ends up overtopping, it's going to bypass the stormwater system. So again, I would, the fence and the sign is what I suggested. They did make those changes based on my comments, though I would still just recommend that the commission, you know, consider, you know, are you comfortable with that level of protection, you know, of making sure that that area is not going to, you know, be used excessively for snow storage. And then finally, as we've touched on, the concern about that southeastern stairway, because of its proximity to the Brockton Audubon Preserve, which is again a Brockton conservation area and of jurisdictional stewardship concern to the Conservation Commission. Again, just reiterating the concern here is that the not only is the stairway positioned very close to the property line into the Audubon parcel, but there is an existing access road to an area that the previous property owner at the Benson concrete area has been using for several decades now to store, it looks like from the aerial imagery, concrete products, debris, and so on. And they've continued, to use it for that storage even after the land was donated to the Audubon Preserve. So it was an ongoing encroachment that did expand over the years. So the concern that I see is that that stairway is right next to that access road, and it does present, I would think, possibly an area of confusion, that if someone were to go down those stairs and see that access road and find an area that has been used for storage or dumping for several decades, that it could be misconstrued what the intention of that area was. And indeed, that was a conservation area that was donated and was meant to be used for conservation purposes since it was donated in the 70s. So my recommendations to try to mitigate was the signage that's been suggested. Considering other practical considerations, I did suggest perhaps a gate, unless there was some specific regulation preventing it. Certainly that, code or regulation could be brought forward if such a thing is not possible. But ultimately, again, I'd ask the commission to consider, is the conservation area adequately protected as well? And so I'd say those were my 3 areas of previous comments that I would ask the commission to consider. I did send out the revised plans to Beta Group. They did comment that most of the comments were fairly minor at this point, but unfortunately, we received these revisions on May 2nd. So Beta has not been able to get the official confirmation that all the comments have been addressed. So I don't have a follow-up letter to present at this point, but it should be coming shortly to confirm whether all of Beta's stormwater comments have been addressed. And then the rest of my report is just introducing some additional special conditions that I would recommend, either that were recommended by Beta or conditions related to monitoring, so that the commission, again, when you're considering the plan as it's presented and then possible special conditions, are all of your concerns adequately met? And that would be my recommendation.
Can I just speak to one thing about the SWIP conditions, the stormwater conditions? There are going to be requirements in the SWIP about stormwater monitoring after rain events, and there's specific rain events required for monitoring. So I would ask that the commission not be that detailed when it comes to directing stormwater monitoring. Maybe mention something to the fact stormwater shall be monitored per the requirements of the SWIP, and copies of the stormwater reports shall be submitted to the commission. Maybe something to that effect, just to avoid any confusion with the environmental monitor that's out there. Because I think there isn't really a storm rain event disclosed in the proposed conditions.
So per the new NIPD's construction general permit, and the previous NIPD's construction general permit, the SWIP requires, it has a range based off of, the requirements of the site for the SWIP. We haven't filed the SWIP. We're going to work on that once we get the, this project through permitting. We have a contractor that will be in charge of it. Someone, and all of that information needs to be included. And that has periodic maintenance. It ranges from once a week to every 14 days. It has storm events. It's all required in that. And what we'd like to do is, rather than have or delineate a specific environmental monitor and an inspection report during the construction phase for the project, as recommended in Megan's letter, we just the SWIP reports and those that are already required, so that there's not additional work, there's not people going out there for a second time, that there's not confusion between those persons, that those SWIP reports be as well as the SWIP the draft SWIP that's brought to the commission, the reports that are done per that SWIP plan or the requirements that are that, also granted to the commission, by the inspector or the environmental monitor at that time. And that, instead of having, two different requirements, as Megan recommended, once a week and after a storm event, we follow along with the same requirements that are stated in the SWIP that will be there. And we'd like that the condition granted by the board is associated to us just passing along those SWIP reports to the commission rather than a separate monitor.
I think certainly, so the intention of having the environmental monitor is in cases like this where you have a limit of work very close to the erosion control barrier. This commission has seen the need to receive reports, on the status of the erosion controls, on the maintenance of the limit of work, to provide the assurances that the limit of work is being maintained, the erosion control barrier is being maintained, because the commission has found from experience that it cannot be assumed that limits of work will be maintained as shown on the plans. So and again, it's ultimately up to the commission. I'm not opposed to revising the condition such that it will be monitoring reports as will be provided as part of the SWIP protocol. But again, it would be phrased in such a way that there would be reports on the status of the erosion control, someone attesting to the fact that the limit of work is being maintained properly, that would be periodically reported to the commission. So I can draft, alternative language to reflect that would still, achieve what the commission, is asking to see in terms of assurances of monitoring, but I can revisit the language to have it reflect the timing that would line up as proposed in the SWIP.
Yes. Yeah, and those, and just, because we're going through it right now with a few of our projects, they're causing a giant renewal of the SWIP construction general permit, that you're probably seeing a lot of those coming across, in that way that a qualified person is actually now required to be. You'll have to take some classes, and it'll have to be a designated person that is in charge of that. There's a whole report. I have an example of what the new one would be if we were to do so. I can screen share that if you need, but it calls out all of that information, any locations where there's been breaks in the barriers, dewatering, if that was done or performed at any time during the week. That new report, that's what I, trying to just get across, is that a lot of that information is going to be handled and done already by by an entity on site. Who that person is at the time, unknown, but how, I just don't want to, cause many people out there doing exactly the same thing. And I just wanted to get that across, that it's the, if you guys want to receive the SWIP, to make sure on your end that those are being maintained per that requirement. We word it in a way that way, which I think Megan was was stating herself as well.
Yes, I can revisit the language to have the timing and the designation of the monitor line up with the timing and the designation that would be done under the SWIP protocol.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's a good compromise on that. The only thing that, and it's up to the commission, what we think on the fact that we don't have the final beta report back. I know that it's a large project, and beta, I think Megan, you had said, indicated it was nothing that was to surprise us that would be coming back. But I do ask that, is it a good idea that we, since we are meeting May 18th, would it be wise, Megan, for us to possibly, for consistency purposes, wait till the final beta report comes back to then move forward with closing the hearing?
I would expect that the comments to be reviewed are straightforward enough that the commission would have a final report ahead of the May 18th meeting, so that, you know, if it's all clear, it would be all clear by the May 18th meeting, and if not, the applicant hopefully would have, you know, enough time to maybe do a final check if needed before the 18th.
Other commissioners, what are your feelings on that approach?
I would prefer to see the final beta report. Mhm.
And Peggy, are you still there? Ruby, that works for you too? Okay.
I agree. I'd like to see the report.
Okay. It seems like it's definitely coming together, but I think that what we can do is vote this evening just to continue the hearing to the May 18th. Can I get a a motion to do that? And then hopefully then we'll be able to close the hearing at that time.
I make a motion to continue to May 18th.
Second,
Right, Beekler, aye?
Forrest, aye.
Curtis, I.
Ruby, aye? Very good. All right. Thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you
Awesome,
very
thank
much.
you.
Have a great evening.
All right. So I believe that is it for this evening. So let me just pull up. my- Do we have anything else?
I can see Molly is now in the waiting room from TRC, so we
That
can
is,
just tell her she's been continued.
Yes, so the hearing for Massasoit, yes, has been continued to the May 18th meeting to continue the discussion of whether compensatory storage is needed to offset the fill for the slab.
Okay, so are we going to let her know by in writing, or how do we want to notify?
I mean,
her?
I will send a.
Is she on the call?
I just moved her over, so I don't know whether she heard that.
Hi, Molly, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
So sorry for missing it earlier.
Oh, no, that's okay. So basically, just to let you know, we moved to continuance, so we're going to move it to May 18th where we're meeting, and then you'll get an email that'll invite you back at that time. Okay.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so if there's anything else that needs to be discussed, I think we have everything. So I am going to make a motion to close the Conservation Commission meeting as of this evening. Can I get a motion to do so?
Make a motion to close the meeting.
Second,
Okay, all in favor? Beekler, aye.
Forrest, aye.
Curtis, I.
Ruby, hi Ruby.
Excellent. All right. Excellent.
I just want to make a comment. I am not going to be in the country on May 18th. So it's probably very important that you get all the other members to come to the May 18th meeting.
Okay, yeah, I will do.
Actually, you know what? Never mind. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I will be there.
Okay, and if we,
Alrighty.
and yeah, if anyone who has not contacted me has a definite answer, please let me know as soon as possible so I can figure out at what point we will lose quorum so we can go from there.
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night.